If you want to know if you should publish a beautiful children's book via Amazon's KDP, IngramSpark, or Barnes & Noble Press, then this video is for you. We will look at the exact numbers of all these platforms for paperbacks and also for hardcovers, and I will also share my personal recommendation with you. So let's jump right in. Hi there, I'm Eevi, an award-winning children's author and ghostwriter over at EeviJones.com and the creator of Children's Book University. I create videos specifically for children's authors, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. This video has been highly requested. I made a similar video on this not too long ago, but this one adds Barnes & Noble Press as an additional option. When it comes to publishing our beautiful children's book ourselves via a print-on-demand or POD or POD platform, there are a number of different platforms we can choose from. So before setting up our beautiful children's book, we want to make sure we are making a decision that works best for us and our book. And so there are really 5 things we will want to look at that will help us make that decision. One is to look at the available trim sizes. Not every pod platform offers all the same trim sizes. So if we have a specific trim size already in mind, we will want to make sure that it is one that is offered by the platform we wish to use. Generally, IngramSpark offers a lot more options than KDP or Barnes & Noble Press. 2 is to see what formats we can publish on that platform, meaning does this platform offer paperback, hardcover, and ebook. Here it looks like all 3 platforms offer all of these format options. 3 is to look at the minimum page count required to have our book printed. For example, for our paperback, we will need at least 24 interior pages on KDP, while with Barnes & Noble Press and IngramSpark, we only need 18. And for our hardcover, we would need at least 76 pages on KDP, at least at the making of this video. I'm still hoping that KDP lowers this requirement for their hardcovers. So even though KDP offers a hardcover option, as of right now, it isn't really useful to us children's authors because our book's page count is usually much lower than that. That's why the check mark here had a little asterisk on it. 4 is to consider each platform's payout schedule. Here we will want to pay attention to the minimum threshold, meaning how much on royalties will we have to have earned in order to receive a payout. For example, on KDP, there is no minimum threshold, so even if we just made $1, as long as we have selected the direct deposit option, we will get paid that $1 for that payment period. With Barnes & Noble Press, on the other hand, we will have to have earned at least $10 in order to trigger a payout. And we also want to take a look at when the payment will occur. On KDP, for example, we will receive our payment 60 days after the end of the month in which the book sale occurred, while on Barnes & Noble Press, it's only 30 days, and on IngramSpark, it's 90 days. Now, here's a really important ninja tip regarding our payment. When we are selecting our payment method during the setup process, it's best to always select the direct deposit option. Because if we choose the payment via wire transfer or check, the minimum threshold will be $100, meaning we will have to wait until we have earned $100 in order to receive our payment. It's also really important to know that at least for IngramSpark, when selecting the direct deposit option, the direct deposit cannot be sent to a savings account, only to a checking account. And finally, 5 is to look at the royalties. Figuring out our royalties can be quite tricky sometimes, so that's what we will focus on next, with some actual examples so we can see some actual numbers. Just a quick side note here, all these numbers are based on each platform's current calculators. That being said, some platforms don't make their actual percentages as obvious as we would like them to be. So in order to stay consistent across the different publishing platforms, I slightly redefined the royalty percentages for some of these platforms so we can apply one and the same formula across the board. So let's take a look. The way royalties are calculated and the way the royalty rate is used is a bit deceiving and confusing. And that's because whatever royalty rate is being listed is always before the printing costs have been subtracted. So our actual royalties are always the list price, which is the price we are selling our book for, times the royalty rate minus the print costs. And that's something none of the platforms states that clearly, at least not upfront. So let's say the royalty rate is 60%, the price we are selling our book for is $12.99, and the associated print costs are $4.20. Then our royalties are $12.99 times 60% minus $4.20, which is $3.59. So let's look at the different print-on-demand platforms to compare our royalties for paperbacks first. All these numbers I'm about to share with you are for a trim size of 8.5 by 8.5 inch paperback with 34 pages and with wide 70-pound paper. If you want to run your own calculations, I went ahead and shared the links to the different calculators in the description below. So we'll look at KDP, Barnes & Noble, and IngramSpark. Now remember, these numbers I'm about to share with you are based on what these platforms are currently listing. So please make sure to stay up to date because they may change in the future. In order to be able to print our book in color on KDP, we will need to select the premium color option. All other color options on KDP require a minimum page count of 76 pages, which of course for most children's books is too high. So looking at KDP, the printing costs for an 8.5 by 8.5 inch 34-page paperback on white 70-pound paper is currently $4.20. This print cost would also be the price point we as authors can purchase our author copies for, plus shipping. So for this type of book, the minimum allowed list price is around $7. So we can't make our book cheaper than $7. So let's say we're selling our book for $12.99, which is the price we as authors can decide upon, provided it is more than the minimum list price, which here again is $7. So let's say we decide to sell our book for $12.99. Then at KDP's royalty rate of 60%, we are making $3.59 for every paperback we are selling over on Amazon. Now it's important to note here that these numbers do not include expanded distribution sales. These numbers only apply for the books we are selling directly through KDP on Amazon. If you have any specific questions about Amazon's expanded distribution, about the difference, and my number one recommendation here, make sure to watch my separate video on just that. I went ahead and shared the link to that in the description below. And I will share later how these numbers would change if we were to enable expanded distribution on KDP. For now, let's look at the numbers of Barnes & Noble Press. Looking at Barnes & Noble Press, the printing costs for an 8.5 by 8.5 inch 34-page paperback with premium color on white 70-pound paper is currently $5.38. Again, this print cost would also be the price point we as authors can purchase our author copies for, plus shipping. So for this type of book, the minimum allowed list price is around $10.76. So let's say we are again deciding to sell our book for $12.99. Then at Barnes & Noble Press's royalty rate of 55%, we are making $1.76 for every paperback we are selling over on Barnes & Noble. Now, given the stock royalty difference here between KDP's $3.59 and Barnes & Noble Press's $1.76, I was really curious to see how these numbers would change if I were to lower the color quality over on Barnes & Noble Press, because they do not require us to select a premium color option like KDP does. So if we were to lower our color quality from premium to standard, then this would substantially lower our print cost, which in turn would increase our royalties to $3.69, which is 10 cents more than over on KDP. So if the color quality is not as important to us, then we could potentially earn 10 cents more on royalties whenever we send people over to Barnes & Noble to purchase our book. Now let's look at IngramSpark. Here I want to point out really quickly that unlike KDP, IngramSpark doesn't really share a royalty percentage. At least I couldn't find one. So the percentage you see here is my calculated percentage that I based on all the other numbers. So here the printing cost for an 8.5 by 8.5 34-page paperback with premium color on white 70-pound paper with a wholesale discount rate of 40% is currently $4.39. Now here the wholesale discount rate is new, right? We didn't have that for KDP or Barnes & Noble Press, but if we want to use IngramSpark's expanded distribution channels, meaning if we want to use them to distribute our book to all these different sales platforms like Target.com, we have to set a wholesale discount. And for the US market, the minimum is 40%. Other markets outside the US have different percentages. So for this type of book, the minimum allowed list price is around $7.50. So let's say we are again deciding to sell our paperback for $12.99, then at IngramSpark's royalty rate of 59%, we are making $3.27 for every paperback we are selling on any third-party platform, whether that's Target.com, Walmart.com, or any of those different distribution channels. Now, if you have seen my most recent video on IngramSpark, you may know that they just had a big update, which essentially provides us with an exciting fourth option. And that is, instead of selling our IngramSpark copies through a third party like Target.com or Walmart.com, we can now send our buyers directly to IngramSpark to purchase our book. This is a great new option because it really increases our royalties. So for this option, the printing costs and the minimum list price will of course remain the same. So if we again sell our paperback for $12.99, then selling our book directly on IngramSpark, our royalties would be around $5.45, which equals a royalty rate of around 75% using the same formula I mentioned earlier. And it's much higher now because we no longer have to set a wholesale discount. So if you want to learn more on how to set up this new option, make sure you watch my separate video I created on just that. I made sure to share the link in the description below. So looking at the numbers across the board, what should we do? What route should we go? And what platforms should we use for our paperback? Here, our decision would depend on how much work and effort we want to put into this. If we want to make it as easy as possible for ourselves by simply setting our paperback up on just one platform, we could upload our book onto KDP for our regular sales on Amazon, and then enable expanded distribution in order to be able to sell our book beyond Amazon on platforms like BarnesandNoble.com and Target.com. Here are those KDP numbers for any sales we would be making outside of Amazon. So whenever our paperback is purchased on Amazon, we would make $3.59, as I shared earlier. And if they purchase our book anywhere else via expanded distribution, we would make 89 cents per sold paperback. We could also simply upload our paperback onto just IngramSpark alone. So we could make around $3.27 no matter where our paperback is being purchased. Here, however, the disadvantage is that we wouldn't be able to use any of Amazon's marketing tools like setting up our A+ content or running ads the way we would be able to if our book were set up via KDP. If you have any A+ content questions, I made sure to share my video on this in the description below. Now, here's my personal recommendation. As I shared in one of my previous videos on expanded distribution, I personally believe that the best way to approach this is to have a combination of our available options. For any of our Amazon sales, we could use KDP, and for any sales outside of Amazon, we could set up our paperback over on IngramSpark. And if we want to go the extra mile and make sure to earn those extra 10 cents whenever our book is sold over on Barnes & Noble, we could also set up our book on Barnes & Noble Press. But again, this would only make sense if we select the standard color here on Barnes & Noble Press instead of the premium color. Additionally, I would also set up a separate sales page directly on IngramSpark. That way, I can share the link as well because that's where I would realize the highest royalties. Again, I have a whole separate video on how to do just that, and I shared the link in the description below. Now, when going this route of using multiple platforms, here is a big ninja tip of mine that can really save us quite a lot of money. Because it is the exact same book, the exact same paperback format with the exact same title and author name, we only need one ISBN, as long as it is our own ISBN that we have purchased. So that's why I always advise buying our own ISBN instead of using those free ones provided by KDP or IngramSpark. So because it is the exact same format, which in this case is our paperback format, we only need one ISBN, even if we publish on different platforms. If you want any more information regarding your ISBN and to see the only place I would ever recommend you purchase your ISBN, I shared the link to my separate video on just that in the description below. Now, when it comes to optimizing our royalties like this, the absolute biggest and most important ninja tip I could ever give you is this. The publishing order of these print-on-demand platforms is really important. I can't stress this enough. So if we want to publish our book on multiple platforms, we will need to publish our book on KDP and Barnes & Noble Press first, without enabling expanded distribution. So those sales are only happening internally, meaning our book set up on KDP is only for sales that come from Amazon, and our book set up on Barnes & Noble Press is only for sales that come from Barnes & Noble. Once our book is live on those platforms, we can then set up and publish the same book over on IngramSpark. And those will then be for the distribution and sales on any other platform like Target.com and Walmart.com. If we were to publish our book on IngramSpark first, it would automatically push our book onto Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and we could no longer publish the same book with the same ISBN on KDP and Barnes & Noble Press. And that's because each catalog can hold each ISBN only once. And so if we publish on IngramSpark first, our ISBN will be placed onto Amazon. So when we try to publish our book via KDP, it won't let us because the system already contains this ISBN now. And so then IngramSpark's royalty rate would apply across the board. So following this order is really important because reversing it can take months and months and a lot of headaches. Now, what do those numbers look like for a hardcover version of our beautiful children's book? Let's take a quick look. Here, KDP doesn't show any numbers for the hardcover format because, as you now know, as of right now, KDP requires a minimum of 76 pages, which is too high for most children's books, so it isn't really an option for us. But if we set up our hardcover on IngramSpark, it will automatically be pushed onto Amazon, and we will still be able to sell our hardcover on Amazon. But it would be IngramSpark's hardcover royalty rate that would apply here. So if we again have an 8.5 by 8.5 hardcover with 34 pages in premium color, and we set our list price, for example, to $18.99 over on Amazon, our royalties would be $1.60. Just like with our paperback, sending people directly to IngramSpark for our hardcover would again result in the highest royalties. So in this case, it would be $5.31. If again we are okay with publishing our book with just standard colors instead of premium colors, it might also make sense to publish our hardcover via Barnes & Noble Press for any sales that are made over on Barnes & Noble. If we decide to do that, remember that our publishing order is really important. So we will want to publish our hardcover on Barnes & Noble Press first and then over on IngramSpark. In the end, what platform we choose to publish our book depends on our end goal. Do we want to be able to run ads? Do we want to make it as easy and convenient as possible for ourselves, especially for our very first book? Would we mind having to keep track of our book on multiple different platforms? Are we okay with only offering our book via Amazon, or do we want our book to be available on other marketplaces as well? Our answer to these questions will help us make that decision. There is no right or wrong answer here because we all may be looking for different things. But whatever your decision may be, I so hope that this video helped you along the way by providing you with numbers that are nearly impossible to come by without performing a deep dive like this. Please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't yet. It really encourages me to keep making free videos for you just like this one. Here's to making a decision that works best for you and your beautiful book. Bye!